Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Paul. Today, I'm excited to chat with our guest, Lata Hamilton, a three-time guest on the show, who is just now in the process of releasing her very first book, Pioneer Your Career Change. I'm loving Lata's view that to you, your new career begins as a personal decision, but when you go into the corporate world, your new employer is viewing it as a business decision. It's a personal decision and a business decision, and Lata proposes that you understand your career change for you as a business decision as well, that you were working from a business point of view, not as much as a personal point of view. And as you will discover, the dynamics and approach are very different between the two. Also, Lata states this, I'm loving this statement, your career, and as we'll talk about in the show, this is the first chapter of her book, your career is a launch pad for the rest of your life. I'm very interested in discovering more. With that, let's bring on our special guest coming to us from Australia, Lata Hamilton. Welcome back to the next chapter with Charlie.
Hi, Charlie. It's so lovely to be back. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, super excited to be here.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I'm loving, I'm going to talk about technical stuff, that you're using a mic. It sounds like you're in the studio. And
Yes.
You've got the best sound that I've had of anybody in the States, and here you are halfway across the world, or all the way across the world.
Yep, I've got a pretty mic sitting here, and I'd like to come through loud and clear because it's got a long way to travel to get over to you, Charlie.
My producer says the mic that you're using is an Australian mic, and he says it's one of the best in the business. So that's
So good.
So that's great. We have so much to chat about today: career change, strategic decisions, the important role of self-confidence, the need to reconsider your work life in a rapidly changing culture, both office culture and corporate culture and world culture. But what I want to start with is, as I read the preview edition of your book, that the first chapter of your book is titled, Your Career is Your Life's Launch Pad. I'm really intrigued by that idea, Lata. Can you tell me more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we think about the things that we get from career, and the obvious one is, but I think what we sometimes forget about is the fact that the compensation that you get, or the remuneration that you get to make the decisions around the life and the lifestyle that you lead because of that. So it is the opportunity for you to actually create the life and the lifestyle that you want for yourself, whether that's where you live, how you live, the types of hours that you work, the type of car that you drive, the holidays that you take, the type of house that you're in, any of those decisions. And it can even come down again to family decisions or lifestyle decisions, like you might decide to be a digital nomad, for example. Whatever it happens to be, you can absolutely create that life and that lifestyle because of the thing that your career affords you. And it's almost like a socially acceptable way of crafting and creating the kind of life and lifestyle that you want to lead. So that's really where that idea comes from.
I like that a lot. And what I like is that among other things, is that we do live in an age where you can create career. Do you want to work at home? Do you want to work in an office? Do you want to be mobile? Do you want to be steady and consistent? Do you know the data, Lata? What is it? It's not 50%, but it's got to be close to 40% of our time is spent working in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually in the book. I put the stats of if you're working like a regular 40-hour week. I don't know them off the top of my head because numbers aren't my thing, words are my thing. But yeah, we just spend so much of our time. 3/4 of our year is essentially spent at work. And if you think about what are you getting for that investment of time?
Yeah.
What are you getting off the back of it? Are you working to live? Like you probably heard this saying before, are you working to live or living to work? And if you feel like you are just constantly at work, and it's more if your work is not fulfilling you, if you're not happy there, or if it's not giving you the compensation or the remuneration that you would like in order to live the kind of life and lifestyle that you want, then that's your opportunity to make a change.
That's very interesting. I had a discussion that is leading me to write the book that I'm working on right now. And it was with a group of maybe a dozen kids. I get to call you guys kids that are 25 to 38. And about a dozen of them, all of them college grads, all of them in some kind of professional work. And everyone down to a T, no, except one who was an attorney, and he was a prosecuting attorney, and he loved his work. The rest of them didn't dislike their work; they hated their work. Mm-hmm. And just to think how that impacts your attitude, your life. So that career choice is much more than about a dollar or a title, a dollar amount or a title. Is so much more is going on, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially for the younger generations, Gen Y, Gen Z, it is more than just about paying the bills, putting food on the table, putting a roof over your head. That it will always be about that. There will always be an element of work and career that is the practical necessities of surviving life. But today, more and more, we are looking for work that is purposeful. We are looking for work that is meaningful. We are looking for work that is joyful and work that supports us to live a holistic life that doesn't drain us. If we think back to like the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s, maybe I guess up until sort of the GFC, the global financial crisis, like it was about working really hard, and you were seen as being a stand-up employee if you were the one that was at the office the latest. And people don't want to live and work this way anymore. They actually want to be fulfilled by what it is that they do. They want to feel energized at the end of the day, not drained.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great insight. And I think it's an advancement that we're looking at work so differently than we have in the past. So I wrote even in my notes, let's be real. You're writing a new book, or you just written a new book. There are lots of books written on career change, but I know you feel you have something special to add to that conversation. So I've got two questions wrapped up in here, and you can combine them or answer them separately any way you want. What inspired you to write this book, and how would you describe your distinctives? What makes this book important?
They're really good questions. I think for the first one, I guess I'd always had an inkling to write a book, but actually what I started writing originally was actually my memoirs first. I'm 36 now. I started writing my memoirs when I was 33. You're like,
I'm 36 now. I've got to write a memoir.
Charlie, I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday, so I figured I should write down what happened in the first 30 years of my life.
Okay. I love it. It's great. It's time.
To write. Yeah, so I went to write my memoirs, and I was like, I want to turn these into a book. And that's what I thought the book would be. I thought the book would be like just stories from my life and like random stories from my life published more as memoirs. But then as I was writing it, I realized that I actually had a message to share. I've made 5 career changes by the age of 35. And I was like, I want to inspire and empower other people to do that. And I think there's never been a better time, given that with digital transformation and things like automation and artificial intelligence, there is so much change in our workplaces and our industries and the potential jobs that we have on the horizon. And I think that the more that people today start to change their mindset and empower themselves around how they can start to think less in terms of linear careers, and whatever they studied at university or college is what they have to stick in for the rest of their life. There are so many jobs and careers that haven't even been created yet, and the only way that you're going to succeed in the future is to have that flexibility and that fluidity in how you think about yourself in your career. That was like, I had that as I was writing my memoirs. I realized, there's this message here. And the original title of the book actually was One Day in December, because that's when I was adopted to Australia. But I Googled it, and there's apparently already a romance novel out called One Day in December. The next title of the book was going to be Curls and Confidence. Curls and Confidence.
What in confidence?
Curls, because I've got curly hair.
Curls. Okay, I'm just trying to understand Australian here. We had a language barrier there for a minute. Okay, curls. Curls, curls and confidence. That's really cool. That is you.
Everybody who hears that, they're like, I love that title. And I'm like, I love it too. Maybe that will be like my memoirs in the future.
Oh, that would be a great memoir title. That would be a great memoir title.
It would. And I got to like the last paragraph and I just realized that that wasn't the message of the book. So the book was really about career change. It was really about all the things that I've learned, all the things that I've done, and really the challenges and the struggles that I've had. Like, it hasn't been an easy path or an easy road, but I've always had that faith. I've always had that commitment, and I've always just kept going. And that's how I've made 5 career changes by the age of 35 and gotten a pay rise every time. So I think that's the really kind of key thing. It's like, you don't have to sacrifice to make your career change. You can do it successfully and sustainably into the future. And that was really where Pioneer Your Career Change came from.
Thank you. What, in your 5 career changes, were they intentional changes, or is something come along that suited you better and you were ready to make that change? Yeah, that works. Or is it something you pursued? How is it a conscious decision, or is it something of the universe laying an opportunity in front of you, or is it a combination?
I guess it's always been a combination. I've always wanted to more, be more, earn more, live whatever potential and meet my potential. So I've always had that internal drive to go, what's the next step? What's the next stage? And I guess my expectations of myself, it's funny, Charlie, like when you reach a goal, suddenly you find that like the bar moves.
Yeah.
Have you ever found that?
Of course.
So you reach the goal and you like think, oh my God, that's amazing. Like I got to where I wanted to go. And then you're like, oh wait, there's another goal. There's another bar. It's what's the next milestone. So it's always been very intentional. But saying that, I think there is an element of luck and an element of grace in terms of, for example, when I made the career change to change management, it just happened to be an offhand comment from a colleague that she was like, oh, you'd make a great change manager because you've got a background in marketing. And I didn't even know what change management was. So if she had never mentioned it to me...
What was that? How long ago was that, Lata?
Oh, about maybe, what are we now, 2024? Oh, 7 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of about
2017 or so?
2015-ish, 2015, 2016.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
or 2017.
Yeah, something, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, 8 to 10 years. Yeah, about 8 years ago. But if she had never made that comment, I would never have even heard of this profession before. So I think there is an element of luck, an element of grace, an element of being in the right place at the right time, or somebody saying the right thing at a moment. But then it is about having that commitment and that confidence to see that through. I think a lot of opportunities and ideas come to a lot of people all through their career, but it's that chance that you take and that decision that you make to actually see that career change through to fruition.
Yeah. You know what occurs to me as you're talking? It reminds me that it's very important we can luck our way into it, but even part of being intentional means that we have done some pre-work, and that you talk about this in your book, and we understand ourselves, understand our values, understand what we like about a job, what we are good at, our talents, our skills. How much pre-work did you do to these? What did you do to go about understanding yourself? What do you talk about that in your book?
Yeah, like I go through a lot of sort of steps that you can use to really understand where your strengths lie, what your passions are, what you could be good at, and also where the market's going, because there's no point necessarily, you don't have to choose a dying market. And I think that's been a really common sort of theme for me. It's been like, what am I not enjoying about my current career? And then where are all of my transferable skills that I can use to move into a new career? So for example, like one of the activities in the book is remember your intrinsic worth. And that means listing all of the things that you're good at, counting your blessings, feeling grateful for everything, and really building up that sense of self-worth and that self-belief inside you, because you have so much already within you. And a lot of people think that they don't have enough in order to make a career change. So it's when you actually go and recognize that and you map it all out for yourself and you map out those skills and those experiences, and then you look at what are the careers that are open and are an opportunity for you, that's when you can actually start to do that. So it is very strategic. Like, I think that if you want to make a career change successfully and sustainably, it takes that commitment, and it's when you go up with that confidence, that's when the market believes you. That's when employers and recruiters and hiring managers believe you, because you show up with that conviction and you show up with that confidence. So making that really that clear decision at the start, and then doing everything that you can to build yourself up to that person who can make that career changes is really what it's all about.
You're very tuned in to confidence. That's a major part of what you do in change management and in personal development, that you believe very strongly in self-confidence. And I was just listening to a podcast we did last week and just reviewing it after I published it. I didn't review it before I published it. I reviewed it. Fortunately, I liked it. An idea that came to me, that was told to me maybe years ago, a long time ago, and it's now re-emerging as a very strong idea. It's narrowing the definition of competence, or competence, but confidence. And that is not just confidence in I can do anything, but I'm confident in my competence. I'm confident that I'm competent at this. I can walk into any situation that requires my skill set, and I know I'm good at my skill set. I'm a whole different person than somebody else that's not sure, aren't I?
Yeah, definitely. And I think Tony Robbins, I think it is, who says this. He says, you've got to see things as they truly are, not worse than they are or better than they are. So when you're thinking about your skills and your experience, don't be too harsh on yourself. And my editor was like, hospitality and retail jobs that we have as teenagers, would we really count that as a career? And I said to her, I'm like, that's the longest career I've ever had, for six years. But I spent working in a cafe, which was my very first job and my very first career. And I'm like, I learned incredible skills in that profession. Like, I learned customer service skills, I learned perseverance, and so many skills and experiences and talents that I learned in the 6 years, and it was my longest, literally my longest career. So I'm like, don't discount it. Don't judge yourself so harshly. Be honest about where your strengths lie, but then be honest about what you have done, even if it seems so minor or so small. The fact that you've done it means that it is absolutely viable. It's absolutely part of your career history and part of the holistic.
When I was a kid, I got my first job when I was 15 and a half, and that would have been in 1965. And you had to be 16 to get a job. And so I lied about my age. And I said I was 16. They didn't ask for ID. How do you tell the difference between a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old? And I worked in a chemical factory, and the youngest people that I worked with, I was just almost 16. The youngest people were 28, 29, and they went up to 50 years old. I worked with men, and it was in a dirty chemical factory outside. I would stand in, not buckets, but in, I can't think of the word. What am I thinking? In vats that would be 6 inches deep in sulfuric and nitric acid. And it was so hot in there that I had to put water in my Wellington boots so my feet wouldn't get too hot. And you do that at 16. I would not do that later. You do that as a kid. But then there were men doing it. That's why they put me in the tank, because I was a kid. But I did that, and I loaded trucks. I did all these blue-collar jobs through college, and even started my career in the carpet industry one level above a janitor, and in 10 years I was general manager of a division. And but it was those times, Lata, that those early days of work helped me understand what work is, responsibility, accountability, that what you do, what you need to do. I got to work adult jobs as a kid. That was so healthy for me.
Absolutely. they're your formation years, right? Like they're where you're learning about yourself and you're learning about the world and you're learning how to interact. And I think especially for younger generations today, going out and getting a part-time casual job, I should say, like a casual job while you're at school is one of the best things that you can do to build your confidence, to build your own independence, to build your social skills and communication skills, so that when you leave high school, university, college, whatever it is that you go on to do, you already have those skills under your belt. It would be terrible, I think, to come out at 18 or to come out of college at early 20s and to not know how to ask
not
somebody
having had a job.
like.
Yeah. You know what other skills it improves on, or what else it improves on? It improves your skill of being humble. When you're working, when you think you've got this college degree, or you're getting a college degree and you're going to get this high-paying, worthy job, which you may or may not get, there's a humbling. It's a nice humbling that says it's a leveler that is really good. And with that humble spirit, I think a lot of kids now could use more of a humble spirit, because there is a sense with many kids in the States graduating from college that have, especially middle class and above, that have this entitlement issue that I just need to show up because I'm so cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think as well, I think for me, it was a really formative job, because that was really where this idea of loyalty really came into things. It was my longest career. It was the longest job that I've ever been in with one employer. And I have this chapter in the book, which is like the true cost of loyalty, and like what loyalty is doing that holds you back from making the career change that you want, which obviously, as we talked about, that can transform your life and your lifestyle. And so it was almost like, even though I'd been there for so long and I'd been such a diligent and dedicated employee, it was like they still were able to turn around and just treat me poorly for the commitment that I had shown. And again, like as much as you might think, oh, that's terrible that this happened to you, I'm so grateful that it happened to me, because it taught me very early on to put myself first in my career. It taught me very early on to put loyalty on the shelf and do what's going to be best for me and my future. I still had to learn that lesson several other times in several other roles. Like, it wasn't like that only happened to me once and then I was never ever loyal ever again, or had those pangs of loyalty for any other role or employer. But I'm glad that it happened in those early days, because it's you starting to navigate your boundaries, you starting to navigate what you're worth and what you will and won't put up with. And I always say to myself, I'm like, one of the biggest regrets in my career is, after I felt like I'd been wronged by this employer, one of the biggest regrets of my career was going back. It was never the same. I only worked there for a few more weeks or months afterwards, but it was never the same. And that's actually when I started looking for my next career. And
what was different?
Say it again, sorry?
What was different if it wasn't the same?
The trust was gone. The trust was gone. I'd worked there already for over 5 years, and I'd been really diligent. And yeah, I did one thing that was maybe like a little bit wrong, where I wasn't super polite to a customer. And I essentially got punished by my boss over it and not given any shifts for a summer. And I'm like, where's the loyalty there for me? I've been there for 5 years. And yeah, after that happened, and I went and found another job anyway, but then they wanted me back, and I went back. And it was just that thing that was like, it was one of the biggest regrets that I went back, because I wish back then that I'd had the backbone, and I wish back then that I had been more proud of myself and known what I was worth and considered myself as being worth more. It was convenient for me, and I was a little bit, it was convenient. I knew the job, it was close to my home, and I was a bit lazy. And so I went back, but actually the damage had already been done. And it was really from that moment on that I just went, I'm going to find something else. That has been a lesson that I've learned again and again through my career. But I'm grateful that it happened at that age.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, as you're talking, I'm thinking, look what you learned. That was a horrible situation. You wish you had backbone. So you wish you had backbone. You wish you had learned more. But look what you learned from that. You could have never gotten that without the failure. You could have never gotten that without them a two-way loyalty street. You would never have understood that until they were disloyal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those are the formative moments. Those are the formative times when you get to make those decisions in your career, but they have ripple effects to the rest of your life. Once you start to stand up for yourself in your career, that means you might have more strength to stand up for yourself in your relationship, or when it comes to your health, or putting boundaries in place around family, or whatever it is for yourself. And so there's so much you can learn from everything that happens in your career, and it's like nothing is ever wasted.
Yeah.
And everybody who you might have felt, there's some forgiveness exercises in the book around how you can forgive and forget and let go of any of those maybe traumatic experiences or upsetting experiences from your schooling or career. But what I would say is also be grateful for the lesson as well.
That's a perfect way to lead into a break. Is the learning that we get from these first jobs and these first negative experiences. And it's going to take us on to the principles that we're going to talk about right after the break. So let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about principles. You're listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie, and I'm here with my very special guest, Lata Hamilton, talking about her book that is not quite out yet, but is coming, Pioneer Your Career Change. And we're going to talk now about some principles and some nuggets that are important to understand as we think about changing our career. Lata, you know what I talked about this in the introduction, and you brought up a really good point of think of yourself when you're getting a new job or you're in a job, even if you've been in a job for a while, think of yourself as a business unit. You are a business yourself. It's more than a personal decision. It's a business decision. And so you and your employer are two businesses working out an agreement for success for both parties. Talk to me about what it means to think of yourself as a business.
Yeah, so in the book there is this activity called the Map of Life, and my first coach, Matt Catling, he would always say this thing that always stuck with me, and it was because he would put on this map of life in the category of career. He would put career/business, and even if you're in a career, you need to treat yourself like a business. And I never really picked up on what that meant until I was writing this book, and I'm thinking about this concept of loyalty, and I was like, when you go to sign an employment contract, you're not an individual signing that employment contract with another individual. Mm-hmm. You are an individual signing that employment contract with a company or with an organization. So they are essentially a business entity. But the thing is that you're a business entity too, because you're saying, I'm going to provide these efforts, I'm going to provide this work, I'm going to provide these skills and experiences to the best of my ability in compensation for the pay that I get, the benefits that I get.
Yeah, you're an asset. You're an asset to that company. And I mean that in a business sense. You are a commodified asset that when you look at yourself as that, you take a whole different perspective than when you're just looking at it personally.
Yeah, and I think there's been this trend in industry and in workplaces around, it's a person, not just a number. But you are a number on a system. You literally have an employee number, and that's okay. It's almost legal, which is you're making a trade. You're making a business agreement that you will provide this and they will provide that to you. And each party is coming to the table like that. What we were speaking about was really around when you go to make that career change, whenever you're making a decision in your career, it's a personal decision because you are a person, you're a holistic individual. But when it's going from the perspective of the business, it's a business decision. So if you get laid off, if you get made redundant, a lot of people take it very personally. They're like, how could they do this to me? I've been so loyal to them. I've worked here for 20 years. I've worked here for 4 years. You know what I mean? They're so outraged and they're so hurt and they're upset because they're like, how could they do this to me? And that's a personal reaction. personal reaction. But if you think of yourself in the way that you came into the organization, you came in as a business entity, you came in as an individual, and you then have signed up that way, the same is true for when that relationship dissolves. And if like they're making a business decision that they don't need your role anymore, like you are not made redundant, your role is made redundant, instead of thinking of it as a personal affront, think of it as a business decision on their side. And almost you could even potentially think of it as a business decision from the universe, because then the universe is opening you up. So many times I hear about that creates opportunities for somebody for the future that they never even dreamed of.
I like that. I like that a real lot. That takes that calls for an extraordinary amount of self-confidence, and also it's maturity. You're looking at life through whole different lenses, that they're not looking at you always. They are looking at you as a person. They treat you as a person. They take care of you as a person. But at the end of the day, there's a bottom line that's going on. And now, depending on the organization, it can be different. There's some very caring organizations that are going to do whatever they can to make this right, to make this human. But so many organizations, it is just a business. And so the way you're treated, if you can come to the maturity where you accept that, not accept that, you look at that as a business decision, not a personal decision.